Alright, so we've got a big update when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2 and some of the rumors and information about the Legend of Zelda, Nintendo Switch 2 itself, and some of the tech, Animal Crossing, and what Nintendo could be doing, plus the big Nintendo Direct that's set to go down in September. So we're going to go over all of that from a recent podcast from Attack of the Backlog and Nash Weedle, Nintendo Prime, rounding up a lot of the information for us. But if you want to see the full post and everything that they talked about, I have a link in the description below to where you can check that out. But I wanted to go over some of the more interesting parts of that. Plus, we've got a huge sales update when it comes to Nintendo Switch 2 here in the US. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. We're going to start off with the tech implementation of DLSS and what is happening there. So Nash Weedle does note that DLSS implementation in games for Switch 2, even from Nintendo, will primarily begin next year because they upgraded it on the platform this year. So there are games like, for example, Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza that do not use DLSS. And some people were kind of theorizing, well, maybe because they started out as Switch 1 games, but that doesn't seem to be the case if this is true. It just means that Nintendo has a new form of DLSS or new form of implementation that they want to start using really next year. So we'll see some of the games next year that do that. All right, next up, let's talk about what is happening with the Legend of Zelda and what's going on there. So apparently in January, a marketing campaign begins with several dates related to Zelda. He doesn't know what it's for. Multiple dates would suggest it's not the movie, and it's possible Age of Imprisonment is coming out in January or February, so it could be related to that. What's weird is he was told that this marketing campaign that will last all year. What's weird is he was told this is a marketing campaign that will last all year. They have several marked dates throughout the year all about Zelda, probably for the 40th anniversary. So this is something that I want to spend a little bit more time on before we get to some of the other topics. I do think that the 40th anniversaries for Mario and the 40th anniversary for Zelda is going to be heightened in terms of the importance because, of course, it's an even year with the 40th overall, and it's a huge deal. You're looking at generations that have grown up with Mario and with Zelda. So with this here, I do think that Nintendo, especially with the movie coming out and everything, they're going to want to have a big, huge celebration for both Mario and for Zelda. And of course, with movies and with all the different licensing deals in Nintendo world, it becomes that much more important for a lot of these franchises to get their proper due, especially on a big milestone type of anniversary like the 40th. So I expect Zelda to have a huge 40th anniversary. I'm guessing that there's going to be Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. There's going to be maybe Wind Waker HD. There's going to be other potential remasters and remakes and spin-offs. Maybe we get the first sneak peek at the next Legend of Zelda game as well, because I know that they've been working hard on that. So I do think that there's going to be a lot to reveal and a lot to show when it comes to the Legend of Zelda. And I am expecting something to be pretty cool in that respect because Zelda is just Zelda, man. It's one of those things that's synonymous with Nintendo overall, and you're going to have to do something pretty cool for the 40th anniversary of that. They haven't always celebrated the anniversaries of Zelda or Mario the best, but I think that when you're talking about 40th, man, that is just super special. Most franchises don't even get close to being able to be valuable and to be relevant for that long. 40 years, 4 decades, that's crazy. So I think that something awesome is going to be happening with Zelda developments next year for the 40th anniversary. But let's shift gears a little bit to the supposed or rumored Nintendo Direct that's supposed to be happening in September. Switchforce already put out a video and teased on Twitter as well, saying that this is the next big general Direct. This is it, and it's happening on September 12th. Now, man, the interesting thing about this is because sometimes when you talk about these things, Nintendo does catch wind of it, and they do not like people kind of ruining the surprise. So if there was one thing that I would say, and this is something that's happened before, I wish that if you're going to talk about something and you feel that you have information, you should probably wait a little bit further before you give those specifics. But I get you want to be the first to report on things, but I think that we should definitely wait a little bit. You know, I saw Doc Trey talk about that, and something that we've lived through, I lived through when it comes to the Wii U and Nintendo Switch 1 and sometimes. So I think that kind of waiting a little bit would be better so we don't get a change of date or anything. But hey, it is what it is, whatever on that front. But yeah, second week of September, that's what Nash Weedle is now saying, that there will be a direct second week of September. Also VGC, Andy Robinson, that crew, they also say that yes, there's going to be a Nintendo Direct mid-September. So we could be seeing a lot of different things here. We could be seeing a Mario 40th anniversary situation. We could be seeing a new Nintendo Direct. There could be a Metroid Prime 4 Direct. There could be all sorts of stuff happening. I think that Nintendo is going to have an incredibly busy end of the year between October, November, and December. There's going to be a lot of new games coming out. There's going to be a lot of hype and excitement. So I think it's going to be pretty cool with the September Direct to set up all of that. Now let's talk about something else here when it comes to Metroid Prime 4. Now in that Nintendo Direct, he does state that there will be a Metroid Prime 4 Beyond release date and an announcement for a Metroid Prime 4 Direct. But now also Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment will also get a release date as well. Now, there's another thing in here that I thought that was interesting because he did state that there's going to be a lot of big third-party games showing up at this Nintendo Direct. And yeah, I would expect that when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2. This is by far the best third-party support Nintendo's received in the first number of months that we've seen probably ever, or one of the best ever, because essentially you're getting a lot of stuff that we didn't see with the Nintendo Switch 1. With the Wii U, we saw that at launch, then it disappeared after launch overall. And with the Wii and the GameCube, it was a little bit different how games came out at that time period when it comes to the amount of games and independent developers and all of that. But with the Nintendo Switch 2, this is by far the best third-party support at launch and shortly after that they've ever had. And I think that we're going to see more of that. I think that we're going to see more third-party developers as the whole third-party developer kit situation is kind of talk about how third-party developers don't have kits and they're hard to get and all this other stuff. I think that as time goes on, that will improve and more developers will get their kits. Most of the big major third-party developers that we're going to be excited to play games from, Atlas, Square Enix, Bandai Namco, Sega, all of that, Microsoft even, they all have development kits. So I expect there to be a bunch of games from those developers, especially Japanese developers, at this next upcoming Nintendo Direct. So absolutely, there's definitely going to be a lot more third-party games coming through as well. He also states that Doom the Dark Ages is coming to Nintendo Switch 2, which we kind of knew about, but just reiterating that. And he also talked a little bit about Animal Crossing, saying that he hasn't heard anything new, but the last thing that he did hear, that Animal Crossing is set to come out next year, but he'll update us as we go along. I don't know. I mean, they might announce it and then release it in a short time period. I know that originally they wanted to have Animal Crossing out at a certain point, but then they delayed it to 2020, but it was supposed to be out in 2019. So I do think that it's possible that Animal Crossing is announced or talked about or rumored more even next year, because it'll be about 6 years since the last Animal Crossing release next March. So that's about the time that you'd probably want to get a new Animal Crossing game out, because that's the second best-selling game on the Nintendo Switch 1 and help move a lot of systems. So yeah, I expect that as well. But yeah, there's a lot more that he says. So if you want to see the full breakdown of everything, you can check out the link in the description below. Once again, shout outs to Nintendo Prime, shout outs to Nash Riddle and Attack of the Backlog for all of the information, whether it's true or not. Once again, you can take it with a grain of salt until we actually get everything. But I do think that some of this stuff will probably happen because it seems pretty safe when it comes down to it overall, and stuff that we've heard before as well. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. Before we get into the next topic here, make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my videos as soon as they drop. All right, let's go and move on to the next thing here, guys. And we're going to be talking about the Nintendo Switch 2 and its position when it comes to the US sales. Nintendo Everything wrote this up. Also, Circana had some new data, and the Nintendo Switch 2 is 75% ahead of unit sales compared to the Nintendo Switch 1 here in the US. So as part of the United States gaming sales report from Circana, we're now hearing the Nintendo Switch 2 is 75% ahead of the unit sales pace set by the Switch 1. The new console has now surpassed 2 million units sold in the US. Gaming hardware sales in the US were up 21% in July compared to the previous year, reaching 384 million. That's actually the highest hardware spending in a July month since the 441 million achieved in July 2008, and that was in the Wii 360 and PS3 era. When PS3 started to get a little bit more traction, the Xbox 360 wanted to step on the neck of Sony, and the Wii was just booming overall. So I can understand why that was the biggest year July ever overall, especially that summer too. So it was pretty cool. Now the Switch 2 did largely contribute to the number overall. All the other console sales fell year on year here in the US. The Nintendo Switch 1 was down 52%, the PS5 dipped 47%, and the Xbox Series dropped by 69%. Unsurprisingly, the Nintendo Switch 2 was the best-selling video game hardware in terms of units and dollar sales for both July. The same applies to 2025 as a whole thus far as well. So there's the top 20 games and everything like that, but I want to kind of focus in on what's happening here, because I discussed this before when people were trying to say certain aspects or certain things like, oh, well, with the Nintendo Switch 2, people are not going to want to pick up the system because of X, Y, and Z price, because of that. And people just didn't anticipate or didn't know what was happening, because the sales, once again, down. PS5 dipped 47% year on year. Xbox Series nearly 70% year on year, and they've gotten more games and more stuff. But I do think that the sales dipping for the Xbox Series is absolutely attributed to the massive price increase that it got. The sales, when it comes down to it, you're essentially just saying we don't care about the hardware anymore, because it's unsustainable, because they were already not selling that much to begin with. Like, the Xbox Series has only sold around 30 something million units in about 4 years. That's not a great pace overall, considering that they got a lot of third-party support and everything like that, and own a ton of different gaming companies and all of that, and have Game Pass and everything, and it just wasn't really working. So I think that at this point, when you're looking at year-on-year sales dropping 70%, that is a wild number. I mean, it's one thing to be 50, it's one thing to be 47, but nearly 70% is just something to the point to where Microsoft is probably thinking, hey, hardware is not going to be the future for us when it comes to just us. It's going to be everything, putting games on everything. So that's why the pivot even happened in the first place. I think Microsoft is well aware that the hardware, in terms of just selling their own, is completely done, which is why they went third party overall and putting games out on multiple different platforms and saying everything is an Xbox, so they can sell their Game Pass and sell their services and sell their whatever they're going to sell, games and all that, everywhere that they want, to make more revenue to sustain themselves as the Xbox business. So yeah, that's just rough though, man. 70% nearly, but it makes sense. And I think that if you look at PlayStation, them dropping 47%, it's probably due to just a lack of big first party games. I think that's really what's causing the PlayStation to kind of stall just a bit. It's underneath the PlayStation 4 when it comes to, if you line it up, the sales overall. The PS4 was a little bit higher in overall sales, but I do think that that could change with games like Grand Theft Auto 6 coming out next year, and maybe some of the stuff like Ghost of Yotei, we'll see what that does, and some of the other games coming out. But yeah, I think Grand Theft Auto 6 is probably going to be the indicator to where things are going to bump way more up for the PlayStation 5. And the Nintendo Switch 1, obviously it makes sense with the Nintendo Switch 2 being out. Sales are going to drop quite a bit because people are now trading in their Switch 1s or now just getting the Nintendo Switch 2. So yeah, that all makes sense overall. And it's interesting to see. I think that the Nintendo Switch 2 sales are going to continue to really be good and strong throughout the rest of this year. They got a pretty good lineup if everything kind of holds true, because you're going to have a brand new Pokemon game that's going to get people to buy the system with the Pokemon Legends ZA bundle, which is going to be awesome. I think the game is going to be fun and people are going to enjoy that. Then you also have Metroid Prime 4 that's still set for 2025. Some people are talking about a delay, but we'll have to wait and see about that. But for right now, it's officially set for 2025 and it's been playable and people are enjoying it. That's not the biggest system seller overall, but I think it can still get a large core number of Metroid fans to finally upgrade. If you've been playing Metroid Prime 1, 2, and 3, and those are your favorites and all that, you've been looking forward to this, or Metroid Prime Remastered, I think that people will upgrade for that. Also, Kirby Air Riders is having crazy numbers in Japan. I do think that that is going to be a boon and a boost to the numbers over there and continue to get people to pick up the system. And then, of course, you still have Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, which should help get Zelda fans on board as well, because Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity was the best-selling Warriors game of all time. So I think that a combination of all those games, plus what Nintendo's already released with Donkey Kong Bonanza, in addition to Mario Kart World, all of those are going to help the Nintendo Switch 2 have a really strong and good holiday season. I expect it to be one of the top sellers, and I expect it to be strong headed into next year as we get some of the other games that Nintendo's probably going to announce and talk about at the September Nintendo Direct to help contain the momentum. And I think the crazy thing about the Nintendo Switch 2 is that it's not seeing all of its biggest heavy hitters. Like, usually if you look at the first year of the Nintendo Switch 1, you had Zelda, you had Mario Odyssey, you had a lot of the big hitters that came out, which is great. Don't get me wrong, it's awesome. You had Mario Kart, it was a port, but still you had Mario Kart there. But we don't have a 3D Mario yet. We don't have the next big Legend of Zelda. We don't have the next big Animal Crossing. We still gotta wait for more of a big new generation of Pokemon. Like, there are still the biggest, heaviest hitters that are still set to come out for the Nintendo Switch 2. So I think that's going to be exciting to see how people respond to all of those games and when they really start utilizing the Nintendo Switch 2 more to its fullest ability. So I'm looking forward to that as well. So what do you guys think when it comes to everything that we talked about here with the new rumors and information and discussion, and of course the Nintendo Switch 2 sales here in the US? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my vids as soon as they drop. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.